I wrote a book about a year and a half ago, I guess it was, and I did media for the book. And the reason I bring that up is because the publicist got me what they call Christian media, and then for church folk, Christian radio and publications. And then they also got me secular media for country stations or talk radio stations and stuff like that. And when I look back upon the whole experience of interviews, it was interesting to me what each particular side of the aisle focused upon. The Christian side would ask me pretty much the same question. It was all about family. How long you been married? What do you love most about your wife? That was a question I asked a lot. What do you love most about your wife? And the secular side was more interested in how an atheist from the south side of Chicago goes from living in Chicago and working predominantly comedy clubs and casinos and nightclubs for 18 years around the country, and then all of a sudden goes into work in churches. And they couldn't get their head around that. And so I'll answer that. Basically, for me, I crawled in 20 years ago. It'll be, by God's grace, this September, 20 years. I'll have been a sober for 20 years. And I crawled into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Basically, I just wanted to stop drinking. And my father, it was interesting. My father, 2 years into that walk of Alcoholics Anonymous, my father took me aside one day. My dad wrestled with alcohol his entire life up at that point, and it said to me, "What was the catalyst? What was the catalyst that got you to quit?" Because my dad knew enough about alcoholism to know that something profound had to happen in a man's life to get him to stop drinking. And I had been, arrested, obviously, in 1982. I'm a felon. Did I mention that? For me, it was I beat my 6-month-old son in a crib. And I don't ever want to forget that night. It was probably as far down as I want to sink into the depths of what I consider hell on earth. I was all rummed up, drinking rum, and I was cocained up, and I was sitting in my office doing more and more of each, trying to figure out where all this misery was coming from in my life. And, I was absolutely just downright miserable, hateful. And my conclusion was that all of my trouble started when I got married. All my trouble started when I got married and had children. And if I can get rid of this unit in the other rooms there, then I could be left alone. I could just send them money, and then I can go do what I want to do. And all this guilt and shame and humiliation that seemed to permeate my entire being would leave me. So here's how I came up with the conclusion on how I was going to do this. And I am not exaggerating, folks. I figured if I dragged my wife out of bed and I beat her, she'd have no other choice but to divorce me. Because I didn't have the courage to ask for a divorce. But if she asked for it, then a couple years down the line, if it was a mistake, I could blame her. And it made sense to me. The more rum I drank and the more coke I did, all of a sudden it became very clear. And I walk into my wife's bedroom, and our bedroom, and I'm standing over my wife. Now this crack of consciousness comes to me, this little glimmer of there's something wrong with this. I mean, you can sit in an office and plan these things out, and all of a sudden they make perfect sense to you. And then when it comes to do the act, I'm standing there, and this consciousness comes, and you wonder where that comes from. But then my son started crying. And I had to quiet my son because it was interrupting the whole plan. And I went in there, and I just went, shh, be quiet. And he wouldn't be quiet, and then I ended up just pounding on him. And then Tammy woke up and came in. And to this day, I look back on that, and I think of the scripture that says the sins of the father are passed to the sons. That's done. That boy took a beating for his mother. And my wife took him into the bedroom. She sat on the end of the bed and fed him. That boy got beat because he was hungry and wanted a meal. And I'm talking shame and humiliation. When I finally realized what I had done, when I walked into the bedroom and saw him being fed, I heard a pastor once a few years back say this: every man needs to get downwind from himself. Well, that night, God gave me a good dose of the kind of man I was. And I saw myself, a glimpse of what kind of husband I was, and what kind of father I was, and what kind of I really stunk. And I remember breaking down and telling my wife, if you don't take me to Alcoholics Anonymous, I won't go. And if I don't go, I don't see us making this. I didn't tell her what I was about to do 10 minutes earlier. So she takes me to Alcoholics Anonymous. They tell me to pray. And I said, to what? They said, find something in this universe that's bigger than you. The only thing that exceeded my arrogance was my ignorance. I couldn't think of anything bigger than me in the universe. And I certainly wasn't getting on my knees to pray to this thing that I made up. I said, I'm fine. As long as I don't drink, I'll be fine. And one night, my wife and I got into an argument, and I'm not making this up, over a piece of cheese about that big. And it's funny now, but I'm telling you, this is the kind of couple we were. And she wanted me to eat this piece of cheese that was sitting in the fridge for God knows how long before I opened up a new package. And every man in this room will understand, I know my chain of logic in this discussion. I said, you know, baby, if you want it, you can eat it. But you see, I'm going to open a new one up because that's the one I want. Oh, so it's good enough for me, but it's not good enough for you. And I go, no, here. And I took it and I threw it into the trash. And I go, see, it's not good enough for any human consumption. So now we can go eat. And she took it out of the trash and she said, I don't understand what you have. And it escalated to the point, and I am not exaggerating, I was standing on a kitchen chair looking down on my wife, spitting out of my mouth, just berating her about how stupid she is. And when things calmed down, I walked into the bedroom to apologize for the 987th time. And she said, yeah, I know you're sorry. And I said, no, I came to tell you we need help. And you can come or you don't, but I'm going to a therapist. There's something wrong with this. Something happens to me, and I don't know what. But I'm going to find out. We can't live this way. So I go to a therapist, and she says, why are you here? And I said, because I feel like I'm going to hurt somebody in my family really bad. And she said, I believe you. I go, you should. And we started with that, and she gave me Road Less Traveled, a book. And I started reading. When you have a compulsive, addictive personality, and I discovered reading. And I'm telling you, I never read a book in my life until I was 31 years old and got sober. It's amazing how much free time you have when you're not nursing hangovers and, you know. You can only bowl so many frames. And I read voraciously. To one point, my therapist said, you got to stop reading. You're cramming so much information in your head. But I wanted to figure it out, folks. I just wanted, if a man, every man here knows what I'm talking about. If you got something broken, there's got to be a manual to fix it. So if I can fix it, then I can get on with this other part of my life. And in the meantime, my career is just going down the tubes. I would literally sit in stools in clubs. And this is how I would perform. I would perform like this. In a club, and I would do my little dog and pony thing, and then and wonder why clubs wouldn't want to hire me anymore. I hated performing, and my wife used to get so mad at me because the money was going down, and we were ready to file bankruptcy, which we eventually did, and I didn't care. You know, I did not. That was if you're in a marriage today that's full of acrimony and full of bitterness, wait till you get to apathy. I think apathy is Satan's greatest tool to use on the American people. On all people. Because when you get to the point where you just don't care, God made us to care. And I didn't care. I didn't care, whatever you want, babe. That was my response to everything. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to do nothing anymore. I just shut down. And she would just try to shake me to life. She would just go, why can't you at least care about your job? You know how many people would love to stand on a stage and make people laugh? You're good at it. Why can't you at least care about that? And I'd go, for what? What's the point? Don't you get that? I would look at my wife and I'd go, don't you ever wake up and want to know why you're here? What the whole point of this is? Because I got some things for you, babe. Because if it's about going out there and bringing money home so that you can buy things or I can buy things, and then they wear out and we buy more things, and then they wear out, we buy more things. So basically what we're doing is gathering stuff up and bringing it into the house. And when it wears out, we take it out and we put it over there. We gather more stuff because if that's life, if that's what it is, I'm checking out. Because that's not a human existence. That's a gerbil, for God's sakes. That's what gerbils do. They go to the one end of the cage and they bring sticks and they pile them up over here and they spin a wheel somewhere in the middle of it. There has to be more to this life than that. That's all I'm saying. And I got to figure it out. And I just, please, give me time. And she's like, 8 years I've given you. And it's just, Jeff, wake up. This is it. And I go, it sucks. There's got to be more. So anyway, this guy comes in my life one day, and I found out about him. And because of his wealth, because he was so rich, that he had access to just wonderful golf courses. You tell me God doesn't know us intimately. And I wanted him for his golf courses. God had other plans, but I had my own agenda. So I had my agent hook us up, and we go to play golf. And we're out on the golf course, and as men do in a cart, they just sit and they chat and in between shots. And we got to talking about wealth and money, because I'm reading Ayn Rand, which is all about capitalism is the purest ideal, humanistic philosophy. And I said, so how do you accumulate wealth? And he said, you have to know the one that creates wealth in order to understand it. And enjoy it. And I've started to think about that, and I go, okay, I understand. But how do you create that? And he started talking about some stuff, and I went, that's really good. So where are you reading that at? And he goes, it's in the Bible. And I went, Bible? All right. A few holes go by, and we're talking again. He says something else, and I go, where did you read that? And he goes, it's in the Bible. And I said, stop it with the Bible, Phil, please. And he says, what's your problem? And I said, who reads the Bible? He said, I read the Bible. And I said, come on, Phil, it's so archaic. I mean, really, God's word? I mean, do you believe in God? He goes, I wholeheartedly. And I said, we got time. I'd love you to explain that to me. I mean, if nobody else seems to be able to. I just wanted, but I don't get it. And I said, he goes, what do you believe? And I said, I'm an atheist. I mean, honestly, I'm an atheist. I don't. And he said, well, then what's in the Bible that you don't think is true? And I said, I don't know. I never read it. And he said, well, then you're not an atheist. You're a moron. And any man in this room that suffers from a rage problem knows what happened to me. Man, the hair on my neck stood up, and my stomach shrunk up, and I wanted to hit him, but then I would have lost access to those nice golf courses. And if it's possible for an atheist to have an ethical quandary, I was in one. So I said, how so? And he said, I'll give you the short answer. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but it basically was this. If in order to discount an infinite God in an infinite universe, you yourself have to have infinite knowledge of the entire universe. So what you're denying exists is an omniscient being. In order to deny that, you yourself have to be omniscient. It's a self-defeating argument. And when he said it to me, I went, what? He said, Jeff, you're just not smart enough to be an atheist. So why don't you shoot for agnosticism? And I said, what is that? He said, you know this, you don't know. Why don't you acknowledge that there's something in this universe, as vast as it is, that you don't know, that may be beyond your human capacity to understand. And I said, you don't know either. And he goes, well, see, that's where I disagree with you. And I said, he says, that's where my faith comes in. And he said, I'd love to sign you up for Bible study tapes. And he signs me up for these tapes. And I said, will it cost me any money? He goes, nope. And I said, well, then knock yourself out. And he says, can I send you a Bible? And I said, as long as it doesn't cost me anything, you can send me whatever you want. And sends me a Bible. The Bible came in the mail a few days later, whatever, and I put it in the junk drawer, and the tapes started coming. I put them up on the fridge. And again, folks, I'm going to figure this out on my own. And in the meantime, my marriage imploded. We filed a bankruptcy. That imploded, and my career was gone. Absolutely gone. And Tammy comes to me at the end of the school year, and she says, I'm going to Ohio. I can't take it, Jeff. She said, I need some time away from you. And when I'm gone, figure out what you're going to do with your life. I was coming up on my 40th birthday, and she says, please, Jeff, figure out what you're going to do with your life. And before she leaves, she gathers up these Bible tapes in a year and a half's worth now, folks, a year and a half pile of them in manila envelopes, none of them open, and she drops them at my feet. And she said, you either listen to these things or I'm pitching them in the trash. And that little voice, we all have a little voice inside of us, said just leave them. I hadn't opened them up or even really given them much thought for a year and a half. They'd come in the mail, I'd throw them on the fridge or under the sink, wherever they fit. That's where I would throw them. See, God has a plan. God has a plan. And from hindsight, I can see the plan. I can't see it when I'm going in it. A year and a half's worth of Bible tapes. I needed a year and a half's worth because if I would open one up and if I had enjoyed it or got into it, there wasn't another one there and I would have lost interest. And one day I'm walking by those tapes, and that voice says, open one up, and I start to walk over and open one up, and another voice says, there's nothing in there for you, and I start to walk away, and another voice says, open it up, and I have to walk back, and another voice says, there's nothing in there. And I'm telling you, it was a struggle to get one of those tapes open, and you ask yourself, where does that come from, this struggle? I've opened tapes up my entire life for music. It didn't matter. If it's music, I just open them up, put them in a thing, but there's a struggle. Where does that come from? And I read it in the Bible about demonic realms and angelic realms, and there's stuff going on around here that we don't know about. And I went back to this moment in my life as a struggle to get to God's Word, because at one point my brain just screamed at me, it's just biblical trash. It's just biblical trash. Nothing for you. And I don't know why, but I just ripped one open and I threw them on the floor. It was almost like they were hot. I just threw them on the floor. 2 of them in there, and I went, great. And it was Ecclesiastes. I'm glad you laugh. Years later, I shared this story for the first time, and some people came up to me afterwards, and they said, I can't believe God used Ecclesiastes to lead you to Christ. And I go, why? They go, well, it was such a cynical book. I go, well, you didn't know me like he knew me. I have to tell you, from the first time I put that tape in that little tape player and put it on, and I got to tell you, folks, we lost all our front room furniture in the bankruptcy. We had nothing in there but a boombox in our living room and a bookshelf, and that was it. Because God knew if I had a couch, I would have fell asleep before halfway through the tape. So I'm sitting on the floor, and I put this thing in, and I couldn't even pronounce it, Ecclesiastes. So I got to get the Bible out of the junk drawer, which it hadn't left in a year and a half. It was still there. And I opened it up to this Ecclesiastes, and from the moment I heard meaningless, which is the beginning of the NIV, meaningless, and then the other one is vanity. It's all vanity. Everything on this earth. I mean, my brain went, wow, what is that? Meaningless. That's in the Bible, meaningless. And there it was, right in the first thing, meaningless. And when I got out of that first 45-minute sermon from that pastor was this. This is it in a nutshell. Life without God has no meaning. Without meaning in your life, there's no purpose. And if you don't have purpose for your life, suicide will ultimately be your answer. Wow! I'm not kidding you. That's in the Bible? And at one point, I wanted to run on the lawn, and I wanted to run out in my front lawn and go, has anybody read this thing? Wow! What a book! What a book! Like I was the first guy to ever read the darn thing. And when he talked about his Jesus, not the one that I thought made people pious and holier than thou and self-righteous. No, he talked about a lamb who went to slaughter. He talked about a lamb who got slaughtered, an innocent. And when I heard the story of Jesus, I mean, I really heard the story of Jesus. And when God convicts your heart of your sin, and you know what kind of man you are, and you get downwind from the kind of father you are and the kind of husband you are, and you hear about the love of and the grace of Jesus, and nailed to that cross, and they put him up there, and they put the crown of thorns on him, and they spit at him. And I'd been in clubs, folks, where they threw beer bottles at me. I've been in clubs where people humiliated me, and I didn't want to forgive them. I wanted to rip their hearts out. I wanted to rip their throats out. I know how I'd react. And when he says, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I came to save the world, not condemn the world. And there's no list of sins that are unforgivable. There's no caveat. He didn't sit on that cross and say, everybody but Jeff. Not everybody but Jeff. Everybody. No matter what you've done. When he talked to the prostitute at the well, the religious people I thought I knew wouldn't have anything to do with the prostitute. This Jesus not only sat there and talked to her and told her about her life, but he said, I offer you a water, a living water. Once you drink, you'll never thirst again. It's a spiritual water. I, like the prostitute, said, how do I get that? And my buddy Phil, who kept in touch with me, who gave me those tapes, I was in Dallas, Texas one day, and he said, when I met you, I knew you were looking for something. Have you found it? And I said, all I can think to say is if Jesus Christ is not who he said he was, then I'm a dead man. Solomon was right. If this Jesus, this one that I heard about, will give me purpose, then I want this Jesus. And he said, can you admit you're a sinner? And I went, well, let me think about that one first. At that point in my life, folks, it was easy. Paul says the law came. The law was there to convict us of our sin. And when I look at those 10 commandments, I violated every one of them. When I stood on that chair and I looked down at my wife and I called her stupid, I committed murder. When I lust and I look at things that I shouldn't look at, Jesus took it out of the realm of an act. He put it into the human heart. What a gift. Billy Graham said that the day after he committed his life to Christ, all of a sudden the trees were a little greener, the flowers smelled a little better. That's it. The world just looks a little different to me today. I have problems. Tammy went through breast cancer. She's okay. I keep forgetting to mention that. I get emails. Is your wife all right? You mentioned she had cancer. You know, it's like. But that grace, that gift, and that purpose, and that point to life is, this is it. I was created in the image of a God who loved me enough to create me to look like him. He don't make no trash, folks. He don't make no trash. And I live to honor him. And I fall short some days. But I know I can get on my knees and talk to him. No other religion would have me. Christ is the only one that accepted me as I was. What a gift. I'd like to leave you with this. I was sitting watching Promise Keepers one day with a notebook next to me. And again, this is how God works. I believe this. And Promise Keepers and a little poem I wrote while I was sitting there, and I haven't written one since. So I got to figure it was God. It wasn't me. And who I was is not who I am. Today I choose to walk a different path. So feel free to throw at me the stones of my past. I will not deny them, but I will gladly receive them and use them to humble me. For today my shield is the Lord. And it's because of who he was and the blood that he shed. I no longer have to run from my past, but I can embrace it and walk with peace to my future. I thank you for letting me share all that, folks, and I apologize for running long. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you very much.